Yeah, they're getting Russia so wrong. It's just absolutely incredible. But Russia could go on a gold standard tomorrow. China could probably do so as well. I'm not necessarily going to make a judgment as to whether they'll do it properly or not, but they could do it. That's fine. But I think that they will do it to protect their own currency from a collapse in our currencies. And I do see that collapse developing actually quite rapidly now. We depend on the dollar standard for the existence of our fiat currencies. Take the fiat dollar away, and we take an awful lot of credibility away from our fiat currencies. By us, I'm talking UK, I'm talking Japan, I'm talking, foreigners generally. So, yeah, it's going to be a disaster for everybody. I mean, this is the biggest credit bubble we have seen in history. I mean, bar none. This is more than the Mississippi bubble, more than the tulipomania, more than South Sea bubble, more than the dot-com bubble. This is the real big one. And when it pops, it's going to take everything down with it.
You're watching Capital Cause, and my name is Danny, and today's guest is the one and only Alasdair Macleod from Macleod Finance Substack. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Alasdair, thank you so much for coming on. It's been quite a while since we've last spoken to you, and how you been?
I've been fine, thank you. It's nice to be back. Anyway, thank you very much for having me.
Fantastic. Let's just dive right in here, Alasdair. For you right now, there's so many things going on in the world, politically, economically, in the markets. What is most topical for you? I'll let you kind of set the stage here and kind of take us where you will.
Well, pick one of 10, I think, or 20. I mean, obviously, the thing that's most topical is President Trump, his inauguration yesterday, and he's suddenly hitting us with huge numbers of executive orders, trying to sort of sort out the what's good and what's bad in that. I think will probably take a little bit of time. But the one comment that I will make is that his intended policy of replacing income taxes and corporation tax with tariffs, I think is going to be a real problem, a real disaster. At any level, higher tariffs are paid by the US consumer, which means that CPI, the Consumer Price Index, inflation, is going to rise just on that. He's also a spendthrift. We know that. So the budget deficit is not going to contract. If anything, if he introduces the tax cuts before the tariffs have any real effect, then that budget deficit is going to soar. So, and that is highly, highly inflationary. It just undermines the purchasing power of the dollar. So you can forget lower interest rates. That's not going to happen. If anything, the Fed, assuming it sticks to its mandate, the Fed will raise interest rates by the end of this year. And I think probably in the not too distant future, be forced to do it. We're watching, obviously, bond yields. If you look at the 10-year US Treasury, the yield's backed off a little bit now. I think it's about 4.6 or something, having been up to, 4.8. That's going to go higher, in my view. Very good reasons for that, which I'm sure we'll come to in the course of this interview. I think when that goes through 5%, I think it'll ring huge great alarm bells in the equity market and, for the S&P, Dow, NASDAQ. And if you look at the relationship, the value relationship between treasury bonds out along the yield curve and equities are more expensive relative to bonds than they have ever been, certainly since the early 1980s. This is a very serious misallocation, if you like, of value. And consequently, we're in, effectively, a credit bubble. That is going to get popped by higher interest rates. Higher interest rates always pop the credit bubble. And this one is the biggest credit bubble we have ever seen. Why? Because all the other credit bubbles have been rolled into this one, because the Fed has always managed to cut interest rates so that the zombies, the malinvestments are never washed out. So it's just accumulated and accumulated and accumulated. This time, they're not going to be able to do anything because they've run into the brick wall of a debt trap for the US government. The only thing they can do is bring back QE because nobody's going to buy US Treasury debt. And when they start doing QE again, of course, that will undermine the currency. So now that's the dollar. Now, when I say undermine the currency, I'm looking at currency as credit, real money, and it's legal money, and it's in everybody's common law, is gold. Don't believe what the US Treasury have been trying to propagandize over the last 50 years. It is gold. So I'm measuring money and credit and the relationship between them. Obviously, as far as other currencies are concerned, we're living in a dollar-based fiat currency world. They're even more vulnerable to the collapse of the dollar credit bubble. So I would expect to see, for example, if you look at Japan, current interest rates, which are thought to go up on Friday, are currently around about 0.1%, 0.12% or something like that. I mean, it's so far out of whack, it's just ridiculous. And that's why the yen has been so incredibly weak over the last, 18 months. Euro, exactly the same thing. There, the interest rate differential is not quite so great. It's about 3.7% or something. If you take it an average, different components in the EU have different ratings, but sort of roughly 3.7%, something like that, which I think is the ECB's deposit rate. That is still too low. Higher interest rates or bond yields in the United States are going to slaughter those economies. And good old Britain, we've just elected the most left-wing, childish. I mean, we're going back to the communism of the Labour Party back in the 1930s. I mean, these guys are living in a world that no longer exists and has already been disproved by the collapse of the Soviet Union. Now, okay, they've sort of come off, if you like, the more obvious failures of that policy and substituted instead climate change and wokeness. They still want to destroy everything, and that's what they're trying to do. And thank goodness for Trump, because he's exposing this folly hugely by drill, baby, drill. And the other thing, of course, that he's doing is he's cutting out all this woke stuff, which is quite right. People should be employed on the basis of their ability, not on the basis of their color, gender, supposed or not, or otherwise.
Do we see new elections in the UK coming soon?
Well, I think we're going to run into a crisis. Basically, the way a new election happens is if a vote of no confidence is passed in the House of Commons against the government. The Labour government have a very large majority, so it's very difficult to get that vote of confidence through. It really is. So I don't see how that's going to happen. I mean, the only way in which the situation can be stabilized, I think, is it's got to get a hell of a lot worse first, to the point where the existing government under Starmer recognize that they've got the whole thing totally wrong, and they would be susceptible to having some good advice. But I don't think even that's really going to rescue them, because we've got one thing in common with America, and that is that intellectually we're all in denial about the role of gold as real money, and you've got to re-educate the entire macroeconomic establishment. Tell them, look, you're talking rubbish. Macroeconomics is not a science. It is just a belief, and it's completely wrong. That's got to be thrown out the window before we can really come to an answer. And that's going to be a difficult process.
I don't know if you've become aware of this, but I spoke to Eric Yung the other day, and he brought up an interesting program going on in China right now. It's called the Gold Accumulate Program. Are you familiar with this?
It doesn't surprise me, but please go on.
Yeah, so it's essentially a mechanism from which Chinese citizens are able to transfer their, capital, their money, and redeem it in gold, no matter the amount. So effectively, China will end up being able to use its citizenry to gobble up all the gold, or not all the gold, or a lot of gold around the world, and
Yeah.
potentially even drain it from all of these different vaults. What do
Okay.
you make of that? What do you make of China pushing this program, while here in the United States, we're talking about things like a Bitcoin reserve and and Trump meme coins and things like that?
Yeah. I can put a bit of flesh on the China situation for you. Um, Look at it from the point of view of household savers. Household savings are roughly 30% of GDP. Now, um, that amounts to around about 2.5, 3 trillion. I can't remember the exact figure. It's a little while since I worked it out. Let's say roughly $2.5 trillion worth of savings a year.
Hmm.
Now, in the past, this has been funneled into property. That balloon has puffed and gone. So that's really no longer attractive to the Chinese household. Stock market, well, that's difficult. There are times when it's nice, and the times most of the time it's not nice. So that's difficult. So the principal savings medium that they have are bank accounts, and what they will do is they will accumulate 3-year deposits, which, as we've just seen, interest rates have been reduced. So what do they do? I mean, a lot of the banks offer gold accounts. I mean, this is a sort of really what you're talking about. So what we're seeing, I think, is we're seeing a lot of these savings being redirected into gold. They, sorry, excuse me. The Chinese citizen can't go out and buy foreign exchange, even if he wanted to. The yuan has been pretty weak against the dollar. So they would be looking for hedges, if you like, of one sort or another. And I think there's a greater understanding in China that gold is money and the rest is credit, as John Pierpont Morgan put it in 1912. So, yeah, I mean, this doesn't surprise me at all. It's completely in line with my information about what's going on in China, what the savers are doing, the facilities offered by banks. I mean, a lot of banks offer gold accounts. And it's really quite simple for a Chinese saver to move their savings from bank deposit into gold. Yeah, sure. I mean, they've already got something like 27,000 ounces of, sorry, 27,000 tons of gold. I'm talking about the private sector as a whole, and I can see them adding to it. The state has also got a lot of gold, which it doesn't admit to, because it's been accumulating gold ever since the People's Bank of China was appointed to do that back in 1983. And I think that a lot of the gold that went out which was leased and then sold into the market, proceeds then applied to U.S. Treasuries. It was the original carry trade back in the 80s and 90s. A lot of that gold, I think, has been bought by China. I wouldn't be. I mean, I think they've got at least somewhere between 20 and 30,000 tons, and I think the state's probably got more, even more than that, hidden around. The People's Liberation Army accounts. The youth wing of the Communist Party, or they've got lots and lots of places they can hide these things away from the PBOC's balance sheet, because one thing that China doesn't want to do is it doesn't want to undermine the Western financial system. It doesn't want to take the blame for it. If anything, you'll see that China has actually done very, very little in terms of action. It's got where it has basically by us making mistakes. So,
is that why it doesn't want? Is that why it hasn't slapped on a gold standard to its currency, or to this supposed BRICS currency?
well, this is why they're very reluctant to put on a gold standard on their currency, but they can see it's coming. Of that there's no doubt at all. And obviously their partnership with Russia and other members of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and I guess also in BRICS. This is a topic of debate for everybody. As far as China is concerned, I think that they will introduce a gold standard along with Russia. I mean, Russia would do it tomorrow. That I have no doubt whatsoever. But for the Chinese wanting them, look, stay your hand, because as soon as you get a major country like Russia, and Russia is now the fourth or fifth largest economy by purchasing power parity in the world. I mean, it's grown despite all the supposed troubles and us saying, oh, they're really bust and Putin's going to disappear up in a sort of cloud of economic crisis smoke. I mean, they're getting Russia so wrong. It's just absolutely incredible. But Russia could go on a gold standard tomorrow. China could probably do so as well. I'm not necessarily going to make a judgment as to whether they'll do it properly or not, but they could do it. That's fine. And I think that they will do it to protect their own currency from a collapse in our currencies. And I do see that collapse developing actually quite rapidly now.
So it's probably like some sort of trigger in case our currency collapses. When we do have this big credit event, like you've alluded to, what happens to the rest of the world? Obviously, there's this saying, everyone knows it, when America coughs, whenever America sneezes, the world gets the flu.
Yeah.
What happens when America gets the flu itself?
Well, basically, we get pneumonia, I guess.
Yeah.
No, I mean, Danny, if you look at the emerging economies, some of them owe an awful lot of dollars, and rising interest rates are going to hurt them very, very badly. It's going to hurt, particularly where they've got to refinance. And I suspect that China will step in and say, well, you know what, you can sell those dollars, we'll lend you yuan. So I think there might be that sort of thing going on. Russia has no dollars. We've stolen them all, so they don't have a problem there. But you're right to raise that question because, Steve Hanke says the dollar is the least dirty shirt in the laundry. The rest are worse. I mean, we depend on the dollar standard for the existence of our fiat currencies. Take the fiat dollar away, and we take an awful lot of credibility away from our fiat currencies. By us, I'm talking UK, I'm talking Japan, I'm talking, foreigners generally. So, it's going to be a disaster for everybody. I mean, this is the biggest credit bubble we have seen in history. I mean, bar none. This is more than the Mississippi bubble, more than the tulipomania, more than South Sea bubble, more than the dot-com bubble. This is the real big one. And when it pops, it's going to take everything down with it.
Is the price of gold right now indicative of, is it pricing in a big credit event right now? Because it's been holding steady at around 2,600, 2,700 today for quite a while. What do you make of the current price action in gold?
Well, I mean, if you look at what happened last year, it rose in dollar terms by around about 24, 25%, which actually put more accurately means that the dollar went down by that amount. Because gold's purchasing power, while it does fluctuate, it doesn't fluctuate much in terms of commodities, in terms of goods and services, wholesale goods and services in particular. We'll take the sort of retail variations and stuff out of it. I mean, this is documented all the way back into Roman times, that the purchasing power of gold has basically been more or less the same the whole time. What we're seeing is not gold rising, we're seeing our currencies going down, and that's the big, big lesson which everybody's got to take on board. Everything we do is credit. We do not deal with gold. We do not settle things in gold. We can do, but we don't. And the reason for that is we'd rather hold on to our gold and deal in credit rather than, so what we do is we hoard the gold. And if we're not worried about things, we don't need to hoard very much gold. I mean, the Swiss nationals didn't really bother holding gold. I don't know, they've probably got a bit more now, but because the Swiss National Bank held sufficient gold reserves to give everybody confidence in the currency. So you don't need to hold gold. The reason that people are accumulating gold, and particularly foreign central banks, and also the Bank of China, is their trust in fiat currencies and its future purchasing power. That trust is going down. I mean, they're adjusting their reserves for the risk that they see in fiat currencies. So when you see the Bank of China buying gold, they're not really buying gold. What they're doing is they're getting rid of fiat rubbish, dollars and euros. So I think that's the way you've got to look at gold. It's actually, I mean, it's sort of within what, $30, $40 of its all-time high. I mean, if you want to trade it, I suppose that's something that really matters. But given that really the decision you should be taking is, do you want to hold credit or do you want to hold gold, and in what proportions, the so-called price is actually immaterial.
Do you anticipate 2 consecutive years of a upward tick in the gold price?
It's not gold going up. I expect the dollar to continue to decline. That is the key, Danny. So do not think in terms of gold going up. It's the dollar going down. And as far as I can see, President Trump, God bless him, is going to accelerate the decline in the dollar because, they're already in a debt trap. Interest rates are going to rise. Bond yields are going to rise, making the debt trap even worse. And confidence in the dollar. I mean, what does the Fed do? When this bubble pops, and they always pop, okay, what does the Fed do? Does it look after the dollar? In other words, raise rates to protect the dollar and keep it some sort of trading level against gold? Or do they do what their mandate is, and that is to basically try and rescue everything in the economy? I mean, your call.
Yeah, I'm betting on the second option.
Well, I think we all are. We know that under those circumstances, that is basically what the Fed has to do. I mean, otherwise, it's just absolute bloody chaos. And it's not just a question of protecting the banks. I mean, the banks are going to have huge, great write-offs, certainly from small and medium-sized businesses. When it comes to the larger corporations, which also have political lobbying clout, you can see, oh, hold on, we've got to rescue these guys. We mustn't allow them to go bust. We've got an example like that in the UK at the moment. Thames Water. Now, this is instructive, how everybody gets things horribly wrong. Thames Water is a private sector regulated water supplier. The regulator tells the company how much money it has to invest in its infrastructure on an annual basis. And it also says, what level of profits it can have. And it also controls the dividends, which it pays to its shareholders. Effectively, what this means is that Thames Water in the past has had a guaranteed return on capital of about 8%. Doesn't sound a lot, maybe, but because it's guaranteed and because it's a utility, this is absolute ideal territory for private equity. They go in, load it up with debt, gear it up 4 times, and then 8% becomes 30+%. That's the way you do private equity. Now, that's absolutely fine while interest rates are 0 or 1 or 2%. But when suddenly they shot up, you could say, oh, we've got a problem here because it's got to be refinanced. And the result is that Thames Water is bust. What's the government going to do? Shut it down? Let it just go under? No. Basically, what they will do is they will either, if Thames Water can't refinance itself, it'll nationalize it. It won't be allowed to go bust. So what that does is it transfers credit risk from that entity into the currency. And we're going to get that all the time. It's going to be, and this is why, the popping of this credit bubble is actually going to be a very, very serious event.
And how far away is this popping of the credit bubble? Because you and I, and we've had discussions about this for quite a while. When do we see this popping actually occur? How much lead time do we still have?
Well, I think it's a lot closer than it was before President Trump was inaugurated, simply because of his policies. That I think he's going to bring this forward. I suspect, given the extreme overvaluation of equities relative to bonds, as soon as you see the 10-year US Treasury yield go over 5%, I think that's going to start undermining the equity market big time. And I think it's so overvalued that it's hard to see that this is going to be a crash rather than an orderly bear market, if you like. So on that basis, I don't think we've got very much time. It could be a matter of months, might be 6 months. I think it'll definitely be in 2025. That's my view.
Well, if the Trump meme coin or the Melania meme coin aren't signs of a top, I don't know what is. Hey, Alistair, I have a few questions for you from my Substack audience, if you don't mind. This one is from David Cooper, and his question is, so his question is, isn't the gold price limited by the cost of mining?
No, got nothing to do with it. Simple. We've just been discussing what drives the gold price. It's not the gold price. It's actually the value of fiat currencies. Gold's value remains relatively constant. Is the currencies going down? So if you're looking at, if you're an investor in mines, you've got to look at it from the point of view of the makeup of the costs. If the currency goes down, then you've got to think, how's that going to affect the price of energy? The energy that you need in mining, which is electricity and diesel, basically. You could probably sit on miners' wages a bit, if you like, but that's temporary. So what you're looking at, I think, is an expanding profit margin, which is going to have to deal with, sort of continually rising prices, but perhaps not quite in lockstep with the increasing value measured in dollars of gold.
Understood. The next question is, going back to 1971 and drawing a straight line graph of the gold price up to 2 years ago, when there was resistance at 1800, we see that gold beat inflation by about 1% from 71 through 2022. These past 2 years, however, the 25% jump is nowhere near the straight line graph from 1971. The deviation is too much to fit reality. So it'll correct back to 1600 to 1800, just like pretty much everything else. Here's the question. The area under the curve for the past couple of years simply represents debt, does it not? Since the entire economy is debt-based.
I hate to be rude, but I think I think your correspondent is looking at this completely the wrong way. I mean, honestly, what we are actually seeing is an acceleration in the decline of the purchasing power of fiat currencies. That is why gold appeared to rise by 25% last year. And as I say, it's not gold rising, it's currencies going down. And when people get that message, they will realize that gold is never expensive. It is really the prospects for your currency which you should be looking at, not the so-called price of gold. It's immaterial.
And the last question is, are there any safe investments out there? Quote unquote safe.
I never give investment advice. And when I say get out of credit, that's not investment advice. Apart from anything else, gold is not a regulated investment. It is money. It is legal, real money in all our common laws. So that is not investment advice. I mean, if the question is slightly different, and that is what is safe when we talk about getting out of credit, everything else other than gold is credit. And, well, gold, silver, whatever. But everything else is credit, including equities. I mean, it's there are two levels of credit in equities. Which you've got to understand. The first level is that when you buy shares in a company, what you are buying into is a promise that the management will deliver an income stream to you in proportion to your investment in the company, or at least accumulate funds on your behalf within the company if they don't distribute it. That's fine. Okay. But there is another thing, and that is that we now have market intermediaries in the form of DTC, for example, in America, Euroclear in Europe, which actually, because you don't take delivery of a certificate anymore, they have the certificate in effect. So they act as an intermediary between the company and you. So they are a creditor of the company in the sense that the company's management has an obligation to deliver that performance, not to you, but to the real shareholder, who is DTC or Euroclear. And it is DTC or Euroclear who then have an obligation to deliver that to you. So, this is suddenly it's a bit of a chain. And the reason this matters is that if we do have the credit meltdown, which I've just described, all this stuff is going to be collateral for a collapsing system. In other words, you're going to find that you think you own shares in a company or stock in a company. That will be used as collateral for somebody else's problem. Just be aware of it. Just be aware of it. That's all I'm saying.
If you've been watching my channel for a long time, then you know we talk a lot about protecting your wealth in uncertain times. And with everything happening in this day and age in the markets, bank failures, inflation, geopolitical instability, and more, you need a solid plan to safeguard your wealth and your assets. Here's where ITM Trading comes in. They specialize in strategic gold and silver acquisitions, helping people just like you build real, tangible wealth outside of the system. Their team of experts doesn't just sell metals, they create custom wealth protection plans and strategies tailored to your financial goals. Their track record speaks for itself. Just look at their research and client success stories and look at all these reviews here on Google. Don't wait until it's too late. Give ITM Trading a call today or book a strategy session using the link in the description box or the pinned comments down below. I've personally looked at their strategies and let me tell you, they know their stuff. If you're serious about real financial security, ITM Trading is the team you want on your side. Check them out. I saw this chart the other day. It was basically a visualization of inflows versus outflows of millionaires across the world. You may have come across it too. I think it went pretty viral. Okay. The upshot of it was the countries with the greatest inflow of millionaires. Yeah. Number one was UAE. Surprisingly, number 2 and 3, US and Canada. Or unsurprisingly, depending on your perspective of it. The biggest outflows of millionaires, number 1 is the UK.
Yep.
Followed by the likes of China.
Yep. Well, first of all, I would say that statistics of this sort you can treat with a pinch of salt because nobody actually knows. If you had a few million tucked under your belt, would you tell everybody, "Oh, I'm very wealthy. I've got lots and lots of millions, and this is how much I've got. So put me in the rich list"? No, I don't think you would. The fact of the matter is that these millionaires, billionaires, trillionaires are all based on credit, and it's that's going to implode. It's all just hot air, really. They've done very well. They've used the credit system to increase their wealth, which is fine. But all that wealth is in credit, and when the credit bubble bursts, a lot of them are going to lose out. And if, as I would argue, the credit bubble bursting is so serious that it takes down the currencies, unless they get into gold, they're going to lose all that wealth. It's just going to go. I mean, they might have had the prescience to have some physical possessions, artworks, farmland, smart houses in Los Angeles. No, we better not talk about that. That hasn't worked out too well. But you see what I mean? There's there are aspects of that, but then how are they going to maintain them? And if you look at property values in a real currency collapse, you don't want property. You really don't. I mean, farmland is different because you can feed yourself or you can feed those around you as well. But expensive property, no. I mean, I always quote a line from Stefan Zweig's autobiography, which was written, I think, in the 30s. And he lived through the hyperinflations in Austria and also in Germany. And he recalls that, in 1923, you could have bought a 6-bedroom house in a posh part of Berlin for $100. $100 at that time was just less than 5 ounces of gold. Now, we don't know how many zillions of paper marks that was. I mean, on paper, paper, if you like, you probably made a fantastic investment. You probably bought it, say, at, I don't know, 200,000 paper marks, and then it's worth, sort of grillions. But what do the grillions buy? Hardly a cup of tea. Do you see what I mean?
Yep.
And the other thing that really killed property prices under those circumstances was the cost of maintaining property was considerably in excess of any rental that you could get from them. So, the things which we think protect us against inflation, like equities and property and so on and so forth, which in these extreme bubble collapse conditions will give you no protection whatsoever. So all these, multimillionaires, ultra high net worth individuals and all the rest of it, unless they actually get into real money, they're going to lose it all.
Fascinating stuff. I want to get your take really quick before we sign off on this feud that's seemingly going on and what could probably be described as a triangle, so to speak. You have Elon Musk taking shots at Keir Starmer, your prime minister over there, but then you also have Donald Trump taking shots at the country of Canada. Now, Canada, as you well know, is a commonwealth of the UK.
Yep.
And when it really boils down to it, I believe he's called the Government of Canada or something along the he answers to the crown. So
yeah, it's notionally a position. It's rather like the position, if you like, of the crown here with Parliament. I mean, basically, the crown endorses everything that Parliament does. So it is, if you like, a ceremonial role. I think that's the best way to describe it. It's not an executive role. Let's put it that way.
Right. So by taking all these shots at Canada, calling them the 51st state, is this seemingly an attack on the UK as well? Is there a connection here between the two fronts, so to speak, between the UK, Canada, and the US?
I think you probably have to ask Donald Trump that one because I don't really see that there is. I mean, it's not as if our politics actually have anything to do with Canada's politics. Sorry. It's an independent state within the Commonwealth, runs its own affairs. If it turned around tomorrow and decided that it didn't want to be part of the Commonwealth, then that would happen. They determine things for themselves. As to whether Canada would become a 51st state, I think that's quite unlikely because even though the political class in Canada and the bureaucracy in Canada may not be the brightest tool in the toolbox, as it were, or tools in the toolbox, there is absolutely no doubt that they would not want to become relegated from a G7 nation into merely another state of the United States. So I don't think there would even be a plebiscite on it. I really don't. I mean, this is just bluster. Greenland is interesting. Greenland is different. I think Greenland is different because in the case of Greenland, you have an absentee landlord in the form of Denmark. I don't know that Denmark does very much for Greenland, really. So on that basis, I think that the administration, the government, such as it is, I don't know I don't know how the government actually works, or, whether it's a division of Denmark in the same way that Caribbean islands, where did I visit recently? The French ones are part of the European Union because they're a département of France. I don't know what that relationship is, but I could see that the citizens of Greenland, could be a lot more easily persuaded to become the 51st state. That's quite possible.
Do you see a shift going from east to west to north to south? Meaning, if you read into Donald Trump's kind of inclinations, he did broker the deal between Israel and Gaza to bring about that ceasefire. He wants to deal with Ukraine and Russia. He doesn't seem all too interested in meddling in affairs as relative to Biden. overseas. His attention seems to be north-south, i.e., Canada, Mexico,
Yeah.
South America. Do you see that as well? And what does that portend?
Yeah, I mean, basically, it's all part of Make America Great. He wants to concentrate on America, not foreign ventures, if you like. I don't know that he's that interested in Latin America, other than trade and other than trying to keep China out. And that, after all, is his argument for Panama.
Hmm.
So, I mean, but as far as the Israel situation is concerned, um, I just don't see that the resolution, if you like, of Gaza is not a resolution, but the ceasefire there. This is just a temporary thing. It really is. I think that the Israeli army was very hard pressed. The Israeli army basically is geared up to short, sharp wars, not prolonged conflicts. Um, I mean, for example, what happened with Hezbollah? I mean, they did a certain amount of bombing. They killed one or two senior Hezbollah people, and then they had a truce, but they continued bombing. So, and now they've annexed the southern end of Syria, which is employing an awful lot of troops. Hezbollah is still making their life difficult there. Gaza is exactly the same. I mean, I think this is a temporary thing. And what they're doing is they're now having Palestinians elsewhere. So I think that is a problem which is going to get worse before it's resolved, if it is ever resolved. As far as Ukraine is concerned, that's going to be won on the battlefield by Russia. Why should Russia give in? Well, no reason to at all. And if Trump goes to Putin and says, right, okay, we will withdraw NATO completely from Ukraine, and we will not invite Ukraine ever to join NATO. We will take steps to ensure that Ukraine is neutral. You can have the Eastern Oblasts and Crimea, and let's just call the thing quits. I think that's the minimum which Putin would accept. I really do think that if Trump does that, it would be an enormous success. But I think there's a lot of pressure within the intelligence establishment in America for that not to happen. I mean, you've got the Victoria Newlands, you've got the William Burnses and all the rest of it, who basically have been pushing the conquest of Ukraine the conquest of Russia through Ukraine as their foreign policy, and they've been controlling foreign policy. So, that's the other fight that Trump would have to try and win. And as far as I can see, he's appointed a few hawks in that department.
Yeah, and didn't various members of the EU, I believe it was France and perhaps even the UK, who said something along the lines of, if the US pulls out, then we'll pull even more resources into Ukraine. So even if the US does say, all right, we're out, you still have the rest of the European Union who's staunchly behind it, no?
Well, yes and no. That is what they say. But we're really talking a bunch of yes men who've got to dip their hands in their pockets and come up with some defense spending to replace America. And I don't think that they really, in public, would admit to their current concerns over the situation. Their concerns are that, okay, you've got this war, this proxy war, where they're backing Ukraine. The problem is, the moment that France, Germany, UK, whatever, members of NATO accept, look, Russia is actually winning this one, then the whole game is over. They have pushed all the propaganda through the press, and they're still doing it, to say that, Ukraine has managed to do this, managed to do that, and, we're backing them, and, Putin is a bastard. This is all propaganda, basically. They cannot let this propaganda cease for the very simple reason that the moment they do, the whole of the Ukraine situation will fall apart. So I would take what the Starmers of this world and the Macrons of this world are saying, I would take that with a pinch of salt. I really would, because they will. I mean, in the past, Macron has reckoned that it was, to back Ukraine in a war against Russia was absolutely crazy. He wasn't in favor of it. And in the early days, he was sort of jumping up and down saying, oh, I'll try and negotiate a settlement. And everybody laughed at him. But that was really where he was. And so what he's saying is basically for public consumption, not what he believes.
And do you see the U.S. getting involved if and when the ceasefire breaks through in Gaza? Or as Trump said, the other day, he said it was their war, implicating that was Israel's war, not our war here in the United States.
He's got it the wrong way around. Israel are basically running America on this one. It's the Israeli lobby, the Israeli intelligence services basically are getting America as much as they can into this war. They're making it America's war. And what they really want is to escalate it so that America will go and have a pop at Iran. That's really what they want. They're fighting for their survival. I mean, they really are. This is the problem. I mean, since the Arab Spring, which was meant to, take the Arab pressure off Israel, since that has, sort of happened and passed now, since Saudi Arabia in particular, even though this has never really been mentioned, even though Saudi Arabia came off this idea that, all the oil they sell, they will sell for dollars. In other words, they were moving to join BRICS, which they've been made the offer, but they haven't actually taken the thing. They have agreements with China in terms of, I mean, Asia is really where Saudi's future is. And they're walking a bit of a tightrope on this, but we know where they're going. And Bibi knows this as well. He sees what they're doing. He sees that actually the whole of the Middle East is moving towards Russia and China. And this means that Israel would be abandoned, if you like, because it is relying on America to protect it. And under those circumstances, what do you do? I mean, Israel is finished unless you can get America in, basically, to break the whole thing up. And that, I think, means that the guys actually running this war are the Israelis, and they are pushing America into even more involvement. Now, how Trump deals with that, I don't know. This idea of Trump saying, look, it's your war, it's nothing to do with us. I'm sorry. The lobbying, which is intense from Israel and the Israeli interests in Congress and the Senate, I don't think it's as clean cut as that. I really don't. I mean, it's an interesting thing. It's difficult to see how that it will be resolved, and I think the idea that Gaza is a ceasefire, this is progress. No, it's not. It's a pause. It allows the Israeli army to.
I believe we had a ceasefire last year too, didn't we? We had a ceasefire last year, didn't we?
We did against Hezbollah. Yeah.
No.
We never got a ceasefire in Gaza. I mean, there was all sorts of little bits and pieces, but basically they continued bombing the shit out of Gaza. I mean, it just completely destroyed the place and the people too. I mean, the casualties.
How does Turkey's involvement in Syria, does that complicate anything in your view?
Well, it's a hell of a mishmash. It really is. I mean, I have no doubt that Erdogan's sort of thinking back to, the Turkic people and the Ottoman Empire and all the rest of it. And he sees Syria as part of that. So, yeah, he's going to take over northern Syria, already doing it. The other thing is that he's fighting the Kurds. He doesn't like the Kurds. They are a thorn in the side of the Turks. So he's got to have control over that. There is a complication, and that is that America has the oil fields, and their support is basically Kurdish. So you've got two NATO members, if you like, with a sort of rather tricky position there. How this is going to turn out, I don't know. The new government, sort of came in with promises that it wouldn't be divisive and all the rest of it. Yeah, well, to hell with that. It's going to be very Islamic. They've appointed experts in Islamic law, if you like, into the courts. So you're going to have hands lopped off, women stoned, and all the rest of it, and beheadings, and all that. And religious tolerance, I reckon, will go out of the window. I mean, this is the great thing under Assad. You had Christians, you had Alawites, you had all these sort of different religious sects and emphasis existing side by side without a problem. That is now going to go, in my view. And then, of course, you've got Israel trying to claim as much as it can in the south to stop, apart from anything else. I mean, it wants to settle. It wants to have kibbutzes there. But apart from anything else, it's looking to cut off the supply lines to Lebanon. So, Hezbollah in Lebanon. And so Syria is basically being cut up rather like Libya. And it's just a complete mess. How it'll turn out, I just know it's bad. It's just going to be very, very bad. I think the Syrians' people's troubles have only just started.
So how does that work? How do you have conflict between two NATO members like Turkey and the U.S. and potentially even Turkey and Israel? Now, granted, there's some commentators and analysts out there that say, Turkey and Israel, it's all kabuki theater between the two. Some say otherwise. Some say now Turkey is the number one persona non grata, even before Iran now. How do you view Turkey's kind of dynamic between Israel, United States, and Turkey? What's the calculus there? How do you thread that needle when you have two NATO members involved and then Israel involved? So if Israel attacks Turkey, that's an attack on a NATO member. It seems very complicated. How do you
well, I don't see the attack. I don't see an attack on Turkey. That I don't see. What I tend to see, I think, is that Turkey, its view of Israel is that they shouldn't really be there, because the whole of Palestine before the First World War was part of the Ottoman Empire, and that's they want to get that back. And I mean, this was the fight, the Arab Revolt under Lawrence of Arabia. It was getting that area back. Erdogan really thinks that all should be Turkey's territory. So as far as they're concerned, they're not sympathetic to Israel. Of that, I'm absolutely certain. I think that the whole thing is walking a bit of a tightrope in terms of NATO relationships with America having literally stolen Syrians' oil fields, supported by another enemy of the Turks, if you like, the Kurds, the Syrian Kurds. I don't think it's going to be happy. And the other thing is that I actually think that the only place which this new government can turn to, Syrian government that is Iran. They've got similar extreme religious views, and I would have thought that they're natural bedfellows. So that's another thing which we can put into the mix.
Turkey and Iran? Is that what you're referring to?
No. I'm talking about Syria. Syria. The Syrian government in Damascus and Iran. Yeah. And also the other thing is that the Syrian government have been quite careful not to upset the Russians. They quite like to have the Russians there because I think they see them as some sort of protection.
Mm. But don't
ask me how this one's going to turn out.
I'm not going to hold your feet to the fire on this one.
It's an awful mess. It really is.
Yeah, very unpredictable. Well, Alistair, it's been a pleasure having you on, my friend. Anything else you want to talk about that we didn't get to in this interview before we wrap up?
Yeah, I hope I made the point. Just get the hell out of credit. No, we obviously can't get out of credit totally, but just be aware that we are in the biggest credit bubble in history. Credit bubbles go pop, and when they do, the vast majority of people lose everything. So don't be one of those people.
Fantastic. For people who want to see more or hear more from you, Alistair, where can they find you?
Well, I have a Substack, which is where I'm devoting virtually all my energies now. And it's alistairmcleod.substack.com. But if you Google McLeod Finance, I'm sure you'll be led in that direction.
Yep.
And
And
I
we'll have the links
very
down
much,
below as well. We'll have the links down
yeah.
below for you.
I mean, yeah,
Check out.
basically, what I do is I try and educate people about money and credit, the distinction between them, what is actually going on, if you like, behind the scenes, politically and geopolitically, and from the point of view of economics. But there's quite a lot of stuff there for free subscribers, which will help them understand the whole thing. But if you really want to understand and protect yourself, and I'd strongly recommend that you become a paid subscriber.
Excellent. We'll have the links to that down below, guys, so be sure to check it out if you're interested. If you got value out of this video, give us a like and comment "Go, Alistair, go" in the comments section. Also, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss an episode just like this. And then check us out on Substack, capitalcosm.substack.com, where you'll be able to ask any one of my guests any sorts of questions that you'd like, similarly to what we just had with Alistair. And links to all that is down below. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Bye, y'all.
Thank you. Okay.